Luke Mathers joins us today. 2018, he published his first book, Stress Teflon.
Thanks very much, boys. It's good to be here. This place is awesome. My work was really full on and I was partying way too hard and smoking way too much dope. And basically, my brain went into fifth gear. They put me in a padded room. So I went to the mental health facility. We have this idea of this sort of nirvana, this perfect place where we want to be. And if I had that, everything's going to be awesome. And it's just not.
TradeMutt Radio, coming through on your wireless.
Okay, we're sweet.
Good.
Yeah.
Red light, red light, red light,
And that's
red light.
red light.
Have we got 4 red lights?
4 reds.
That usually means fucking stop
in a big way.
because something's wrong. But in this case, everything's right.
Everything
because
is right.
We have the bloody great pleasure of having a legend in the studio once again for TradeMutt Radio. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen.
You are on absolute
You like the way I
fire, mate.
rolled in
There's-
with that one?
There's steam coming out of your
It's
ears.
the pseudo-ephedrine. Now, Luke Mathers joins us today, and we're going to find out a lot more about him, this guy right here. You might find him knocking around Palm Meadows down on the Gold Coast, playing off 9, formerly 6. He's let his game slide a little bit. In 2018, he published his first book, Stress Teflon, which we're going to find out a bit more about. But most interestingly, formerly an optometrist, I've just been to pick up a new pair of glasses from Bailey Nelson, and he's given me the fit test and said that I've passed with flying colours and don't look too bad. So thank you, Luke.
I would say
Yeah, you've done it well, mate.
not
You've
too
done it well.
bad. Jeez, that is, yeah.
On that introduction, welcome to the studio, mate.
Thanks very much, boys. It's good to be here. This place is awesome.
Thanks, mate.
It's rocket.
Thanks for coming in.
The clock is a new addition.
Yeah, the clock. And
Wow.
Warney on the wall as well.
Warney.
I
He's-
know
Yeah.
it's Warney. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's going to throw a little flipper in there.
He looks great. He
I
looks
would
great.
pay so much money for him to bowl me a flipper.
One day. One day.
The
I'm
clock,
sure.
the clock I picked up from a garage sale 2 weekends ago for about $2.
nice. You've got the crack just in the right spot.
I know. I
He
know.
dropped it on the way in here.
Of course he did.
But it keeps the time, and it's also good for us finally because we don't have to be looking at the podcast machine to see how long we've been going for. So just so you know,
Right.
Ed,
Oh, yeah,
pretty sure we
quarter past.
started it, yeah,
Quarter past.
about quarter past.
Yeah.
So,
Mate, it's great. Well, yeah, Luke, thanks so much for coming in and coming out from the Gold Coast today. We really appreciate that.
Pleasure, mate. It's good to be here.
Huge effort.
you can tell by the tan that you've been that you come from the Gold Coast, eh?
Yeah, there's a lot of sun down there, a lot of beaches and stuff, so it's not hard being me.
Great little spot. We were connected on LinkedIn. Put a shout out a couple of weeks ago about some podcast guests. Your name was thrown up a fair bit, and we connected. And great to have you in here. And I mean, your backstory, you were just telling us a little bit about it off air. You being one of the first directors of Specsavers in Australia.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity because I owned one of their practices in the UK and I moved over there, back in the late 90s and did really well and all that sort of stuff. Come back when the Aussie dollar was a dog with fleas and was just at 31 pretty much retired. So hence got the handicap down to 6, which it didn't stay there too long But one of the things about that, at 31, you think, I'd love to be, have enough money to be able to retire and all of that, and I did that. But by about 33 or 34, I was kicking stones.
What were you doing? Like, you obviously, being a director of such a large, franchise, I suppose. It's a franchise, right?
It is a franchise. I actually owned the biggest franchise.
Right,
So,
okay.
There's a whole super group.
Yeah.
I wasn't a director of that. I was a director of my one. So
And-
I had the biggest one in the country.
And you were running around, obviously, like a blue-ass fly running that thing. And then at 31, you're like, I'm checking out.
That was later. That was my one in the UK, which
Right,
was just a
okay.
practice there. So, and then came back here, and by sort of 33 or 4, I was sort of fairly miserable. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking, I've got everything I thought I wanted, and it seems to be not. Something was missing, and the thing that was missing was stress. I needed some things to fire me up. I needed some problems to solve. I needed a reason to get up out of bed.
Well, what was your day-to-day before you realised that? Like, how were you feeling the day and retired at 31? I mean, that's...
Yeah, well, the hustle is all your mates are at work. So you end up doing things like playing golf and surfing. I had my daughter around about then as well, so that was nice. I got to be the dad that got to stay home a fair bit. And, if you've ever seen me surf or seen me putt, you don't want to hold your self-worth on how well I do back, cutbacks and how well I hold 3-foot putts. Your self-worth goes down the toilet a little bit. So it's almost one of those be careful what you want things. And I got what I thought I wanted because I'd worked my ass off for the few years before and worked really, really hard. And all you want to do when you've been working really hard for ages is think, I just want to do nothing. And then you do nothing for a little while and all you want to do is do work. And I think we have this idea of this sort of nirvana, this perfect place where we want to be. And if I had that, everything's going to be awesome. And it's just not. You've got to be able to swing, you know. You've got to be able to go between that fully fired up and that fully chilled out. And we don't do that. We try and find perfect and stay there.
Why do you think that is what we're seeking or thought? Why do we think that's what we need?
Yeah, really good question, Ed. It's one of those things. I think what we always feel like we need is the other end. If we're really, really running around with our hair on fire and stuff, all we want to do is chill out.
Yep.
And when we're chilled out for too long, all we want to do is fire up. And we don't ever get that let's just enjoy the swing. Let's enjoy rocking between the two. And I think when you start enjoying the journey, I know it sounds like a bit of a cliche and stuff, but if you start enjoying the journey of firing up, but then deliberately making sure you're chilling out in a way that you actually really enjoy, to actually fill your downtime with stuff that actually empties your stress bucket.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, finding joy in stuff is the best way to decrease your stress. And if you're just so busy working, I've got to get the next quote done, I've got to get to the next job site, and I'm running late, and you're kind of always running around with your hair on fire, and don't take that time to, I'm going to really enjoy some time with my family. I'm going to go and see my mates, and I'm going to go and see my mates in a way that's not just see how many beers we can throw down. I'm actually going to go and see my mates and connect with my friends and all of that sort of stuff. Then you can start swinging between stressed out and chilled.
So tell me, what year was that when you retired at 31? And not to try
I'm 50,
not to let anyone work out any age or anything.
You can do the maths. I'm 50. So that was about, I retired for the first time in 01.
2001, righto. What was I? Grade 6 at school.
Yeah, I was doing about as much work as you were.
Yeah, righto. So I had a lot of support. I had high needs. You can't really. Most people are only just getting their shit together, if at all, in their late 20s. Really, from what I've seen, from what I've observed, from what I've kind of, a lot of people now.
That's sort of the area, isn't it? Yeah.
Aren't really sure, but there's no rhyme or reason. There's no perfect scenario, but to be retiring at 31 seems fucking ridiculous. But was there an element of, when you said that you were retiring, what did your mates think? Were you like,
were you phrasing it that way?
Were you like, oh, I'm done, or was it just a quiet thing?
Fuck you, blokes, I'm retiring.
I can do it. Because what does it look like, and what do you have to have considered at the age of 31 to make an official retirement?
Well, most of it just comes down to,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, but it was never like I'm going to retire. It's just like I'm not going to work my ass off anymore. Okay. I worked my ass off for quite a few years before that. So that shit doesn't just fall out of the tree. There's with lotto or anything. I had to work. And I worked really, really hard. But as hard as optometrists can work. But it wasn't like I'm going to retire. It's just like I'm not going to work. And I think I ended up working a day a week or something like that.
Okay, so there was still something going on.
But very little.
Very little.
I have this, I've had this perception of, retirement being like, righto, that's it, feet up, done. But actually, retirement for a lot of people means that it's not, I'm totally done. It's just, I'm stopping that 9 to 5 grind and I'm just going to ease right back and just, preoccupy myself with a day or two a week, this or that.
Going back to your point before about people only get their shit together in their late 20s, all of this was great, and the business I had in the UK was great, and businesses I've had here have all been fantastic. But in my late 20s, I far from had my shit together. At 26 or 7, I had a thing called a hypermanic episode, because you guys are into mental health, so if you want to hear a mental health story, I got a doozy. Yeah. Smoking way too much pot, having way too much fun. I was a prick of a husband. I spent my whole time with mates and single blokes and out on the cans and going to races and playing golf and all of that sort of stuff. My wife's Irish, so she moved over from Ireland, followed me, and we got married and all that sort of stuff. So we got married at 25. And all of our friends were single blokes. So I was a really shit husband. I was a really good mate, but I wasn't a very good husband. And we were that far away, an inch away from getting divorced, and it was really, really stressful, and my work was really full on, and I was partying way too hard and smoking way too much dope, and basically my brain went into fifth gear. If you heard of people who are bipolar, they have manic episodes and depressive episodes. Well, I basically just had the up, and just didn't sleep for pretty much 2 weeks, lost about 12 kilos.
Wow,
was just let's do business plans for this and let's do business plans for that. At one stage, I'd been to our head office of the company I worked with, and they actually said, look, I think there's something wrong with him. And they said to one of my mates, can you just take him for a beer? And we're going to get some mental health people to come in and have a chat. Weird concept. You've got mental health people. Let's go and take him for a beer. But anyway, that's how it was back in the 90s. And funnily enough, we're sitting there and we had like ties and shit on. And there was a couple of tradies sitting right next to us on the next table. And we just started chatting to them after a while. And we said, what did you think about us? And they've gone, we just thought you were white-collar poofters. And we're just having a chat and all this sort of stuff. And when you're manic, you have this thing called manic persuasion where you can basically just talk people into stuff. And so I've gone to these guys, I bet you some white-collar poofters fucked you over at some stage, haven't they? There's something bad, white-collar, they do all of that bad stuff. And he's going, yeah. And I bet you've got a really good idea that, it just never got off the ground because no one would believe in you. So, well, I'm going to believe in you. You tell me what your idea is. Long story short, about half an hour later, he walks out with about half a dozen coasters with the plans for a remote control wheelbarrow. And he was going to revolutionise business, building sites all around the country with his remote control wheelbarrow. And I'm just like, yeah, that's going to be awesome. And that sort of stuff. So I ended up going back. He left. We've left the pub after lunch and gone back to at the head office, and they've basically had some guys come in and have a chat to me and say, you're either coming with me or we're going to give you a jacket that buckles up at the back and you're coming with me.
Yeah,
so that were my two choices.
So that was a 2-week manic episode.
Yeah.
And what was the outcome of that? How did you actually navigate that?
Yeah, did you know you were in it?
Yeah, I probably did. You completely. It's a hypermanic episode, so you're kind of just under how high they get when it's fully psychotic. When it's fully psychotic, you lose sight of reality. And I blinked a couple of times and lost reality, but most of the time I still was fairly lucid, knew what was going on. So yeah, you knew that you weren't quite right, but you were fucking loving it. It was really good fun. It was basically better than any drugs or party you've ever had because your brain was just like, there was no brakes. There was no brakes on your brain.
That's righto. That's such an interesting insight. What would have happened if you kept on that path? Like, is there any way of knowing or?
Well, then it starts turning into psychosis, and then you start losing grasp of reality, and think you're gonna be king of the world and all this sort of stuff. You do think you're pretty shit hot when you're in that state.
I've experienced. One of my best mates went through mania and psychosis, and it's not something that you want to see.
The mania side of it from the person experiencing it actually isn't that bad. For my wife, it was hell.
Yeah.
It was it's super tough.
It's all the behaviours and all the things that are said that are just, these, like that feeling of grandeur or like being some form of superhero or something like that. Things that are said that, sound ridiculous to someone who's not there, but to that person, it's like a completely logical thought.
And you also get that persuasion side of things too, like old mate walking out with his coasters for his remote control wheelbarrow. I convinced him that the remote control wheelbarrow was the best idea.
Did he ever make it?
I have no idea.
Because the thing
is, there are ones out there.
Well,
Don't Makita have one?
We've been down to Trade Tools down there.
Oh, yeah.
And they've got a remote control wheelbarrow in their warehouse.
Jeez, I'd love it if it was him.
Wouldn't
that be a great story? I met some crazy optometrist dude, and he, he's now made his millions.
He's the one that came up with this.
Yeah, righto. So coming, because this really interests me, because coming out of that, how did you navigate that? What did it look like? Did you have to have some serious therapy, or was it just a matter of detoxing?
Yeah, it was a little bit of detoxing. They basically put me in a padded room. So I went to the mental health facility. This was in Adelaide, and I lived in Perth at the time.
What was that like?
They basically just drugged me out and I slept for 2 days. So I can't really remember much of that. It was pretty confronting when you came out of that particular room and you're in your room in this mental health hospital and the person in the room next door to you is mooing. And like there was some kid with intellectual disabilities would come into him and just ask to borrow money to buy chocolate milks all day. So I reckon he had about 10 chocolate milks during the course of the day.
They are delicious.
You like what you like.
But it was really strange talking to the psychiatrist because he basically diagnosed me within about 3 seconds and said, you're bipolar. And I went, well, I've never had a depressive episode, but you're bipolar. And every day he'd come in, hey, how are you today? And I'm like, yeah, g'day, doc, how are you? And he'd say, well, you're still a bit high. And I'm like, I'm always a bit fucking high. So, what do I do with that? So after about 4 days of that, he came in and I just pretended I was depressed and he let me go home the next day.
Really?
Yeah, but I still wasn't well. I still, my brain was still thinking things that, would get stuck on stuff. And
So you're in there for 4 days, 2 in the padded room, and then 2.
yeah, so I was in there for a week.
Okay.
So I was in there for a week, and then pretty much had a month off, and I was reasonably good by then. But that, you can look at all of these things, and it's one of the things about stress Teflon that you can look at that and think, oh, poor me, I've got some mental health issue. But one of the things about mental health is you do get better. I mean, a lot of the time you get better, and it's when you first get diagnosed with something or something like that happens. And that was just it turned out that was just an episode. I haven't had another episode since. They put me on lithium, which is what they give people who are bipolar, and I took it for about 3 months. And I just remembered every time I took it, it just reminded me that there's something wrong with me, and I didn't like that. And
Like just the physical taking of it, not the way it made you feel.
Yeah, the way it made you feel probably I didn't really notice much with that. But I just remember saying to my wife, look, I don't want to take this anymore. And we had a chat to the doctor, and I basically just said, look, if you notice something that you reckon I'm going a bit hyperactive again, you tell me and I'll go straight back on it. And my wife's a really intuitive. She's a really smart lady. She's fantastic. And she just went, yeah, let's do it. And there's been a couple of times, when things ruminate in your head, that they start, something rents a room in your head for free. That was the start of the episode. So I always get a little bit worried when that starts
Like a warning
happening.
sign.
Yeah, and I've learned some pretty cool tools now of how to actually almost sort of cognitive behavioural therapy stuff, how to sort of rewind those things and stop something renting a room in your head for free.
And this manic episode, was this pre the 31 packer up?
Yeah.
Yep.
This was at 27.
Okay. So then you've gone from there and you've...
Hey, we were broke on the bones of our ass and all of that sort of stuff because we were partying pretty hard.
Yep.
And then basically moved to the UK, worked my ass off for 3 years and...
Still partying?
3 or 4 years. Yeah, but partying within reason then.
I suppose you got a different circle of mates around you as well.
Yeah,
at
exactly.
the time,
Well,
if any mates at all.
It certainly was the best thing that ever happened for our marriage.
Oh, right.
From the marriage point of view, it certainly solidified that. But I just worked really hard. I went in and took over a place that was a dog with fleas and turned it into something pretty good and sold it at a really good time. And I got lucky, but I got lucky. They talk about those things. You get lucky.
Your own luck. Yeah.
You get lucky, but you also are in the right place at the right time with the right skill set.
You got to do a certain amount of things to lead you there in the first place. Right?
Yeah, nothing happens just by fucking pure chance.
No,
So
but often nothing good happens without a little bit of chance too. So I kind of had both.
Yeah, 100%. So it's okay. So you've had the manic episode, then you've gone and done this, and then retired. So. And you said it was about 3 or so years of just sort of doing 1 day a week and fluffing around.
Yeah, pretty much.
And what was the progression? Because I suppose like the euphoric feeling of, fuck, I'm doing 1 day a week. I'm like, that'd be quite a high bit of euphoria. Like you'd be like, I'm fucking braining it here.
I'm focusing on my golf game.
I can do whatever I want. But then how quickly did it turn from that to being like, oh, fuck, this isn't really what I was expecting and it's not what I was anticipating it to be? Like, was it a slow progression, or was it just sort of like one day you're like, fuck, what am I getting out of bed for?
Yeah, there was a bit of a one. There was never a what am I going to get out of bed for? I'm a bit hyperactive anyway, so I'm always going to have something to do. So it was never anything like that. But I just remembered looking at my mates and the joy that they were getting from achieving stuff. One of them owned a big timber company, and they're like, we've just signed this thing and we've done that and we're doing this. And just how focused they were on what they were doing. And I just like, I hold a 3-footer on the 17th. And it just didn't.
But there was no one around to see it.
Yeah. All my mates
were all working.
I was playing with 3 old blokes that were just about dead. But it was, we live in humans we're a meritocracy. We judge ourselves based on other people. We can't pretend that we don't compare ourselves to other people.
Fuck, talking about that. So I was in the TikTok loophole, or the black hole of death on TikTok last night. And it was this, mate, it was so bad. But there was a video that came up. Algorithm must be working out what I like, because there's been a few popping up that I've been enjoying. And one of them was a professor at Harvard. And it was kids, like I think it was like sophomores or whatever, the first year that they came into Harvard.
Freshmen?
Yeah, and they were doing, freshmen. And they were doing like, however, 250 or whatever in this cohort.
Yep.
And they said, right, there's 2 options. There's option A, which is you as an individual make $160,000 a year, and all your other cohort will make $150,000.
Right.
Or everyone in the cohort makes $220,000 a year. You make $200,000. What do you think they chose?
Yeah, the 161.
90% chose to make 160 and everyone else make 150.
Yeah.
So it's not about what you're making. It's what about everyone else is making, which is so fucking true. I was like, isn't that just the truth? I was mind blown. I was like 100%.
My new book's actually called Curious Habits, and that's a curious habit. Why the hell would we do that?
It does not make a single bit of sense. Single bit of sense.
But we do it anyway. And there's 1,000 episode, things of that. We compare ourselves all the time, and when you're watching, and you got to remember too, you need some stress. That was the sort of the thing that lit the fire about that. And then fast forward a few more years, and this isn't all about me, but it's going to be about me.
Yeah, this episode is about you. Yeah, it's 100% about you.
But a few years later, Specsavers came to Australia, and I kind of went around the country and helped sign people up, and drove around Queensland signing all people up for Specsavers and stuff. And that was great. We opened 100 stores in 100 days. It was the biggest retail rollout in Australia's history. Right? You ever tried opening a shop? It's pretty hard. They had a really big team. They had really big pockets, and 100 stores in 100 days. Biggest retail rollout ever. That was so stressful and so exciting. It was just amazingly good fun. And then got knee deep in it. No one thought it was going to work. Everyone, I remember I go around to optometry conferences and see people I met that I tried to sign them up, and they didn't say yes because they didn't think it was going to work. And they just saw me and were like, "Oh no, I don't want to see him." That was a bad decision not to do that. And then looked around, and a few years later, I'm making truckloads of cash and all of that sort of stuff, and all of that's really good. And I kind of got a little bit, not getting into it, not getting out of it. It just was, I got to the top of the mountain again, and the view wasn't quite as good as what you thought it would be. And so I went to my doctor, and this is where this was born, where stress Teflon was born. Went to my doctor, and he basically said, "Oh yeah, I think you're a bit depressed. Here, have an antidepressant." So he basically gave me Prozac.
Drive this into you.
Yeah, and I wasn't depressed. I wasn't at all. I was still doing all the things that brought me joy. I was still getting joy from lots of things in life. I just wasn't quite getting into work. And so I took this stuff, and it actually made me feel a bit better. I don't know, do you want me to nerd out on what Prozac does?
Yeah.
Procac's a
nerd out, my friend. Nerd out.
There's a chemical in your body called serotonin, which is basically the I feel good, I'm enough chemical. If you feel like you're shit and that things are no good, you don't have enough serotonin. It's one of the reasons for depression. There's heaps of them. And so that what Prozac does is keeps the serotonin you do make in your system longer. I didn't know any of this at the time. I'd never studied this stuff. I had no idea. And then a few weeks later, I'm actually feeling pretty good. I wasn't feeling bad in the first place, but I was feeling better. And so I decided to go and have a look and see what these tablets do, and read all about serotonin and looked it all up, and then went, well, if it's the thing you get from doing something really good and putting your heart and soul into it, why the fuck am I taking tablets to do this? Why don't I just do things really good and put my heart and soul into everything? So I talked to the doctor and talked to my wife and said, look, I'm not going to take these anymore. I only took it for 3 weeks, and actually probably take 3 weeks to actually properly work anyway. So I don't think I actually even got any effect from them. So I stopped taking them, just put my heart and soul back into it. But what that one little investigation into what serotonin is actually took me down a rabbit hole of evolutionary biology, why we do the shit we do, and all of it. We haven't changed much in 10,000 years.
Yeah, right? That's the first chapter in your book.
Yeah, we haven't changed much. So we are perfectly designed. We've got little claws and little teeth, and we don't run very fast. How the bloody hell did we conquer the world? It doesn't make any sense. And the reason we conquered the world is because we have these chemicals that, like serotonin, that actually pull us into our tribe, that pull people closer to us. And we have all of this stuff that's actually designed to keep us together and keep us alive in the jungle 10,000 years ago. The hassle is it doesn't work quite so well in a modern society. We're comparing ourselves to people driving Lamborghinis and all of that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of things in our body that isn't designed for the environment we're in. So we've got to learn how to hack that system. And that was kind of what we came up with Stress Teflon, to work out how our stress system works and then how to use it in a modern environment.
Yeah, because I mean, like, reading through here, and I wrote a couple of notes when I read the first couple of chapters this morning, and one of the lines you say is like, stress is awesome. And happiness is a choice, not a destination, and that is sort of plays into Jared Gosling's when he was talking about, success isn't a destination, it's the journey and enjoying where you're going.
It's the old cliche.
It is, but cliches are cliches for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, if a cliche wasn't true, no one would say it again. We say it again because it's really true.
But there's also the part of it where it's not just the journey, for no fucking reason. Like, you've got to be doing some things right to put yourself on a path to, to a certain place. You know what I mean? It's like what you were talking about earlier. Like, you weren't working your ass off, but you were working your ass off. That's the thing. And, that's how you achieve success. Like, you weren't doing nothing, you got to be putting yourself in the right position initially. You got to give a little together.
Well, you've got to have the right skill sets too. So you've actually got to, I couldn't read until I was 9, in grade 9. I got eyes that go wobbly in different ways. So I actually couldn't read as a kid. So I actually thought I was dumb.
Is that how you became an optometrist?
Yeah, it was one of the reasons. I actually didn't find out my eyes went in funny directions until after that. I became an optometrist because a friend of my dad was an optometrist and he had a big boat. So I think that looked like it was a good idea. And I was going to be a doctor and then didn't want to get called out at 2 a.m. because something bad had happened. So I thought optometrist was 9 to 5. My mate of my dad's had a big boat, so that seemed like a good gig. So I did that. It was basically laziness.
Yeah.
I didn't want to.
But even at that age, you're looking at the boat. You're like, I want that boat. What's he done to get that? I want what he's got.
We grew up out at the back in the Rang, and we had 4 kids, and we were by no means top of the totem pole. So it was one of those things. I watched my mum and dad work their asses off and all of that sort of stuff, and they ingrained that in me too. So that wasn't ever an option. I'll work hard. It was that's just what you fucking do.
When I want to know, when you were flat chat, spec savers, were you enjoying that day to day? Like you said, when you got the 100, you were, but at sort of nearing the end, was it like when you were like unpacking it up? Was it because you'd lost the love for what you were doing? So like going to work wasn't as fun.
And it goes back to the same thing with stress Teflon too. You've got to have a challenge.
Yeah.
Life's full of little staircases, and you get stuck on a step, and you get that itchy, scratchy sort of. I'm not
uncomfortable.
Happy. I'm uncomfortable, and the hassle with that feeling is that feeling's either got to be your catalyst to I'm going to change, and I'm going to take a new challenge, and I'm going to do something scary, which is what stress Teflon's all about. Or your other option with that itchy, scratchy, uncomfortable feeling is I'm going to dull it. I'm going to drink, half a dozen beers and a bottle of bourbon every night, or I'm going to take some drugs. Or I'm going to eat, 5 banana nut muffins and 3 pies every day because that's going to bring me joy.
Banana nut.
I was going to say.
Fucking wow. What an exotic muffin.
Interesting choice. The Brazil nut?
But the other one that we do when we get that itchy sort of feeling is we pretend we don't give a shit. Apathy is the thing that comes up, and I'm just going to go through the motions and I don't give a shit. And that is just a recipe for misery.
Fuck, I've been there.
We've all been there at some stage, but what we've got to do is recognise that discomfort, that ants in our pants, that itchy feeling, and that, okay, I've been on this step too long. I've got to up my skill set and do something else and be brave and go out and do it. If I fuck it up, I fuck it up.
That's the key though, isn't it? And it doesn't matter like what it is, what step you're stuck on, or whether it's a mental health challenge or a job that you don't like anymore. It's like recognising first, like at least talking about it out loud, recognising that that's where you are. That's the key to leveling up in the first place. And if you can get past that little first step, then you're on your way.
Well, it's the realisation of, like you just said, the need of it. When you can, self-awareness to say, righto, this is that again.
That something's not right. Yep. Like critically thinking about all the aspects of your life and like what it is, what components are at play here, and if it's a job, if it's a relationship, if it's a financial situation, whatever it is, at least being able to recognise that, okay, I think this is it, and I'm in control to do something about it.
Well, one of the things about that is action gives you answers. All right, you do something and it'll either give you an answer to say, yes, that was a good thing to do, or to give you an answer to say, geez, I shouldn't have done that. That was pretty silly. I won't do that again.
You're not going to know unless you take action.
You've got to take action. And that's the hassle with getting stuck on that step. We get stuck on that step, and we've been in the same job, doing the same thing, being miserable, going home and being a miserable prick to your family and stuff like that because you're not happy at work. You haven't got any challenges that are firing you up. And then what you do is try and, what can I do to feel good? And you pick something that really doesn't normally
I was literally because I was just writing the TX Alliance deck before I came in here, in like an hour of psychology for the same price of going and seeing a psychologist, private sector, you could buy 6 cartons of piss.
Yeah. And numb the pain.
6 cartons.
Not Bolter XPAs. You only get fucking 2.
Yeah, you only get 2 of those. Yeah,
and you only get a 16 fucking case carton.
You know what I'm choosing.
Oh.
But like...
But it's what we do. We're the most overweight in debt, medicated,
Oh, we fucking suck.
addicted adult cohort ever.
We're so
I'm
bad.
quoting Brene Brown there, so I'm getting all
Adult
No,
cohort.
adult cohort. So we're
We're not doing
That's
ourselves
us.
any favours.
and we're not, and the reason we're not is because we're not being able to accept discomfort as being a cue to do something. You look at things like people are struggling with anxiety, and people always talk about triggers for anxiety. Oh, this triggers my anxiety. And they use words like my anxiety. Anxiety's not yours. It's just something you feel. Like things like no one says, oh, it's my coldness. I'm cold. No, you're just feeling cold.
That's
I'm not-
interesting.
It's not my hunger. It's like I'm feeling hungry.
So instead of saying that triggers my anxiety, that triggers anxiety for
Yeah.
me.
Well, and even I trigger, you pull a trigger and whatever happens is done. You don't have any choice. I actually really like, and part of Curious Habits is going to be to, instead of being a trigger for anxiety, it's got to be a cue to get curious.
Yeah, questioning.
Just stop and think, okay, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking it? Is it helping?
But that exact thing there comes from, I've been having that since I read that book I was telling you about, The Undoing Project.
Mm-hmm.
Like that in itself, and just the way they talk about how nothing people do is based on statistics. Everything's just based off irrational thought and being like, this is, you hear something or you're around people and you get told something and then you just cling to it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's why people get caught up in these vortexes and shit online. It's like the vegan activism, the feminism, the toxic masculinity.
You find yourself in like an echo chamber of whatever it
you're
is
just
that
like,
you're into.
Yeah, this is, or like conspiracy theories or whatever it is. It's like, this is the fucking cold hard truth. It's like, well, there is a truth. It's just like, this is the data and the
truth.
science. Yeah, well, yeah. But it's like, this is the data and the statistics and stuff like that, or even, and the way people react when certain things happen in their lives sort of irrationally because it's, like they talk about in the book, it's like if you're driving down the highway and you see a car crash, everyone slows down. Where it's like, well, it's just because there's been a car crash here, statistically, nothing's changed. You're still the exact same chance of having a crash in a car. Or if you're a
Yeah, but you got to bloody see what's going on. You got to
I know,
slow
but-
down and get a good look.
I
gotta see
know,
the
but like if
limbs
you're-
coming out
but
the
if you-
window.
but
Thing
it's
is
just-
when you see a car crash as well, it's a sobering thing for everyone where you think it's a reminder, oh yeah, cars do crash on the road and we are going fast and it's like, oh shit, someone might have died there. Fuck, you better slow down. Like everyone just, it's an
just a
opportunity
little-
to take
little-
stock.
It's a little check-in. But the thing, I think my point is that it doesn't hold you to it. Like if someone close to you dies from something, it's just like, oh god, everyone's worried about that for
You mean because
a
as
month or
soon as
so.
you've driven past a car crash, you're back up to 110 again.
Yeah, it's I mean,
And
you're
might
just
not exist.
back on your horse.
We go
in your
we go
car.
back to our defaults a lot.
Yeah.
We have a default that's just the way, and if you think about the way your brain gets wired, your thoughts are a bit like water and electricity. They're going to take the path of least resistance all the time. And if your habit has been, this is what I do when this happens,
Yep.
then that's what you can do.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, that becomes like your M1 inside your brain. And if it's taking you somewhere where you don't want to go, you've got to start walking another track. And then you walk another track for a bit while, and then you walk it for a little longer and it's a 2-lane road. And then all of a sudden that becomes your default. And that thing, that road that was taking to you in the brain then goes away and you have a different one. It's still going to stay there.
Talking about like creating, what is it, like
New pathways.
neural pathways.
Yeah. And that's really for anyone that's under sort of 23 or 24, really be critical about your thinking now and make sure that, we're making up stories in our head all the time. You've got to make up stories that help. Not being delusional and stuff, but if you're making up shit that's not helping, you're basically laying down this M1 in your head that's taking you places that doesn't help.
Yeah, okay.
But particularly when you're younger, when your brain's really flexible, you've got to, if you're making up shit, make up shit that helps.
What's an example of something like that?
Something like, who's guilty of procrastinating?
Oh yeah.
We're all guilty of procrastinating, aren't we?
Yep.
Right?
In a big fucking way.
Right?
The king.
What procrastinating is something's difficult and something's evoking a bad emotion, an emotion I don't want. If I procrastinate and put it off, all of a sudden I've regulated my emotions. I don't feel bad about not knowing how to do that thing anymore because I'm over, drinking beers or doing something else. And so what we've got to do is actually recognise that we've got an emotion. We're kind of a little bit, I've got knots in my stomach about this. That's okay. I'm still going to stick with it and work out what to do.
Yeah, okay. It's taking it more head on rather than fending away.
And just there's a line I use in the workshops and stuff that we do a lot, and it just becomes a mantra: is you just got to get comfortable with discomfort.
Yep.
You've got to be able to say, okay, this feels, I got knots in my stomach about this. I don't quite know what I'm doing. I don't want to look stupid. I might fail. I'm okay with that.
I think that's a thing that a lot of like contact sport teams talk about, like being comfortable when it's uncomfortable. And it's just like that's when, you know, the really good sides are the ones when shit is hitting the fan, but they sort of thrive in it.
Yeah.
I remember I was listening to a podcast. It was when the Sharks won the comp, and it
Taking drugs.
no, yeah, fuck, don't
Peptides.
those pricks.
It was
Anyway,
peptides.
I'm an Essendon fan in
don't mention-
AFL, so I hate that.
oh, yeah, you could be poor bastards.
Yeah,
No, but there
it's
was,
no
I think it was Valentine
Port
Holmes or
Adelaide.
someone like that, and it was they were setting up for a backline move at a scrum, and they were down by I think like 2 or 3 tries with about 20 minutes to go, and fucking Val or whoever it was sort of like, oh shit, like what, you know, I'm a bit concerned here, like we've got to win this game. I looked out to the side, and I can't remember who the other 2 players were, but they were sort of laughing and joking and taking the piss out of one another. He's like, oh, what are you doing? He's like, they're like, we're fucking gonna win this. And he's like, what? They're like, oh, we're gonna win. Like they were just like,
We're just gonna win it?
yeah, they were just so fucking confident that they had it all going on. And he was like, oh yeah, righto. But that was sort of like being comfortable in the discomfort. It was sort of like, yeah, fuck, we're sweet. Like we can own this.
We've got to do that. It's why we're the most medicated, addicted, you know, and obese and in debt thing, because we don't actually get comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I feel uncomfortable. I'm going to go out and spend some shit that'll make me feel good, because the whole world's telling me I'm not good enough unless I have this flash ass colourful ute like the ones out the front.
But
Shout out Whipples and Mount Gravatt Mazda.
yeah, major shout out actually. How long should we spend on that?
If anyone sees these utes, they're pretty impressive looking
epic.
beasts.
We are so. I mean, everyone has this conversation right now about social media, the negative effects of social media. But like, so go one step above and talk about marketing in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we are just bombarded everywhere you look.
You can sum marketing up in one sentence. I saw it on one of those, those chicken cartoons, and it has marketing in a nutshell. You are not good enough.
Yeah.
So unless you have this thing behind me, whatever it is, you're not good enough. And so we're getting that drilled into us all the time. And then you compare it to social media. And social media, we're comparing our life, which we spend 100% of our time with someone else's top 1% that's curated, filtered, beautifully manicured and made to look however it looks. And we talked before about being people of comparison. We're comparing 100% of our life with someone else's, highlight reel. It's going to end up with misery. I heard a great quote this morning by a guy called Johan Hari, who's a guy who studies depression. He's an English fella.
Rings a bell, that.
And he's really good. And his whole jig is that depression's all about we're not having contact. There's too much loneliness in the world. We can go into that in a little bit if you like.
Yeah,
as well.
fucking oath.
But one of the things he talked about social media to connection is the same as porn is to sex.
Yep.
And that just kind of sums it up. Yeah, it gives you a little bit of connection and you feel like you're a little bit connection, but it doesn't make you really connected to someone. It's better than nothing. Like porn is better than nothing. You might get rid of a dose of blue balls, but you're not going to have connection after porn.
Yeah.
Right? And I think social media is a bit like that. There's no substitute for the loving connection you feel with when you're with someone you love. And porn's not going to do that, just like social media is not going to do that.
Well, I think the
interesting point you raised after the last podcast we had.
Yeah. Bobsy Godwin, yeah. I think the irony is that I don't think anyone ever would have said one of the highlights or the best times of their life was being on social media and interacting with something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're never your best times.
No one's ever lying in bed thinking, I'm glad I watched that on TV.
Well, that TikTok hole you went down last night was pretty good though.
Fuck, I was deep in there. A
few hours going by.
Oh, mate, boom. But yeah, it's interesting because the human connection side of it and the being able to hang out, and like I've said it on this podcast numerous times, like I like to, like my wife and I, when we go and have date night, we just make a pact. We just don't take our phone. We leave our phone at home. And we just go out, and it's hilarious. We enjoy like sitting at the table and like spotting other couples or other groups of people, phones. And like everyone's on their phone, and it's like really, it's really sad because people don't know how to communicate with one another, and they don't really get to know one another as well because they're just fucking glued to their phone. But the other thing, the sad thing that I see is that when there's families and there's kids. Like I'm not a parent, but I can understand why parents give iPads or phones or whatever, because it just shuts the kid up, right? They just
It's instant
sitting there.
gratification.
Yeah.
Kids crying. If I give them that, I know.
And they shut up, which is, I understand. But some of the best memories, me growing up, was sitting at the dinner table with mum and dad, like when we grew up out west, and then like we'd have, you know, shearers, or we'd have contract musterers or jackaroos and stuff, and we'd all sit at the table, and like everyone was in the conversation. And like I used to learn shitloads of stuff because like I've never heard, like, that's, you know, I never knew like that was what that was. And, you know, like you'd sit there and you'd be immersed in a conversation. And every now and then, I'm sure I fucking poked in there and told some story or hurt, you know what I mean? Like that sort of
But
stuff.
that's probably what made you what you are now. You sit here and you can engage with anyone, and you can have a chat, and you can get all these weird ass like Bob that was on the podcast, and all of these people, because you had that. And one of the problems that we're getting is we're so stuck on our phones, and we're becoming so insulated. We go in behind our big gates into our McMansions, and that's where we stay. That whole African proverb of it takes a village to raise a kid.
Yeah.
And we're not doing that anymore. Kids aren't getting their grandparents to come and mind the kids.
I know, but I just can't. I can't understand why we're doing it like that. Because it's the family is so important.
But it's like situationally, it's not always feasible for that to be the case. Like if you look at my brother and sister-in-law, for instance, who've got a 1-year-old down in Sydney. Mum is a midwife. She still works 7 nights a week. You know, it's a whole separate conversation.
But everything in reason.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like if the opportunity is there.
Yeah, for sure. But like, there's so many, and we're so far apart. Like so many families are so spread apart now as well. You know,
but that's the white culture. We just do that.
And that's the thing we look at. Yeah, we look at
pack her up and leave.
It's a good thing we got FaceTime, like for that. Like when you can video call, like that's pretty great, right? But it doesn't replace.
Even again, when you talk about connection, that's your social media is to connection as porn is to sex. You know what I mean? You don't want to talk about that with your grandma, but but we're not having that connection anywhere near as much. And I reckon a part of it is that we're not revering old people. We're not looking at people who are older and want to learn their lessons because they might not know how to use Snapchat and they might not know how to use something. We kind of write them off as not knowing anything. And those guys around the shearing table and all of that sort of stuff, those guys had great lessons that you would have learned.
Oh, shit, yeah.
And we don't have those anymore, and we need to. We need to be able to embrace intergenerations and be able to be interested in what grandma's got to say, hear about, you know, during the war and all of that sort of stuff. You want to hear that stuff, and we just don't anymore.
But culture has changed so much where people are like commonly fearful of people that they don't know for any number of reasons. What you see on the news every day.
I actually think a bit of that is toxic stress because we're marinating in that stress of constantly comparing to each other. The one thing about stress when it gets toxic and when your stress bucket's nearly full, what you do is you become defensive and you become dumb. All right, you don't think straight. The part of your brain that works then comes offline because you don't need that to run away from tigers. All right, so that comes offline. And what it turns into is I'm right, you're wrong, fuck off.
Yeah.
All right, and we become very
and there's no
definite.
reason.
There's no often there's no reason, but we don't actually embrace the shades of grey. That you disagree with me that Dan. Tell me more about why that is, and I'd like to open my mind and be curious as to what.
Why don't you fucking come around this side of the table then, mate?
Well, that's it. That's what happens.
But why do you think we've lost that ability to hear opposing views and find somewhere in the middle? Why do you think that is? Because
cracking question, Ed. It's a really good question because part of that is that thing we talked about before is we're not comfortable with discomfort. You can look at something, I've got this ingrained thought, this is what I think, this is right, this is black, this is white, this is what I think is right. If you come at me with another thing, that means I have to admit that I was wrong and I'm not comfortable with that. Whereas we can look at it like that and we can dig our heels in and I'm right, you're wrong, fuck off. Or we can kind of say, okay, yeah, that's a really good thing. Tell me more, learn a bit more about it and have conflict that is actually productive.
Yeah.
There's a guy called Adam Grant who's at Penn State in the States, and he talks about, and you think about this on building sites and stuff like that, that you can have conflict and we might argue about how we're going to do a certain thing. And if we can have a conflict argument about what that certain thing is, and we can both give our opinions and work it out and be open to the other ones, we're going to actually end up with a better result. The hassle is that sort of conflict about a task turns into I'm right, you're wrong, fuck off. And it turns into a personal conflict. If I've got a personal conflict with you, I'm not going to listen to your idea. But if we're having a conflict about the task and how to do the task better, and we've both got respect for each other's opinions, that task is going to get done better, and we're both going to be involved with it.
Yep.
You see that conversation happen a lot. I've seen it heaps on building sites, and then what happens is if you can't be bothered to have that conversation that you're talking about, and then something happens with the way that that person did that task, and then it comes off. I told you so. You know what I mean? We should have, and then you got it. Like it comes back out again either way. You know what I mean? Like
we get more upset. We get more entrenched on it. We want to be right more than we want it to be good.
Is it?
Say that again.
We want to be right more than we want the activity to be good.
This is an ego thing though, right? Like this is like to do with our. Our foundations, like our belief systems and our structures, that like if one pillar is pulled out, then the whole thing comes crashing down, or what?
Possibly. I think it's just that we've got to be able to say, wow, Ed, that was a really good idea. Yeah, I think I was wrong about that. The way you're going to do it, I reckon that might be better.
Yeah.
And I'm open to that. And it doesn't make me bad at what I do. It doesn't mean I'm a terrible chippy or whatever it is. What it means is I'm open to actually improving my skills and listening to what you said and taking that on.
What has just fucking not triggered me, but made me remember something. Remember when you were having to look after Norcon there, remember? When all that went down. So we had backstory. There's no way in fucking hell our old boss is going to be listening to this podcast, so we can just free rein here.
I'd love it if you did.
Oh, yeah, fuck. But so we had a boss. There was two bosses. One, he had a fair bit going on. He left, but he was sort of the one that was running the show, right? He was always on, like you were talking about. He just threw himself into everything, is flat out. And then it was just all too much, and there was, a time where he had to step away. And then the other boss, he wasn't quite up to the task to handle what was going on. So Dan went in there and was, keeping the ship afloat.
Yeah.
But I remember we went and...
Was he grateful for that?
This is the thing, right? So we went and caught up with our old boss and his old man, who, on the level of blokes, he's pretty rough old bloke. And I remember... we were in there and they're having a conversation, and basically it was just running down saying like how fucked everything was and that he couldn't do it without me, and you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was sort of like, not thanks so much for fucking keeping this going for 6 months without me ever asking for it, like you just stepping up and doing it. It was just like, I knew it would fucking fail without me, like you need me, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, wow.
It was more important for him to be right than it was for his job to be good.
Than for him and his employees to make it through and still be employed, and his customers to have fucking jobs still going. It was more important for him to feel that we were all fucking shit house and we were nothing without him.
One of the problems that we've got, particularly with Australian males and stuff, is that we have learnt leadership in a time where it was just fucking do what I said because I'm the boss. All right. The hassle is that doesn't work anymore. All right. And what a lot of places haven't worked out, whether it's building sites or corporate hierarchies or whatever, is that the modern generation isn't going to respond to that, right? So you have to be able to change. You have to be able to change your leadership style in a way that's actually pulling them in and helping them see the bigger vision. And this, you can look at the generation of millennials and say, they're narcissistic, self-entitled little turds, and some of them are. If you go looking for that, you're going to find it, absolutely. But if you also look at them and say they're people that really want the world to be a better place, they want to make weird-ass looking high-vis so that they can talk about mental health and help people. You know what I mean? It's a fantastic thing to do. They want the world to be a better place. They want to look after the environment. They want to help people, and they want to make a difference. You're going to find heaps of evidence of that too.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, my age and older, are kind of, it's really obvious to see the narcissistic ones that are all about them, but there's also this beautiful thing that happens with teenagers and people in their early 20s where they're absolutely fantastic and ideological and amazing.
It's an interesting insight, and not for an optometry pun, but it depends what lens you're sort of looking at things through.
Exactly right,
doesn't it? Yeah, you like that, didn't you?
Yeah, that was good.
You know what I mean? Like,
you're the brains of the outfit, aren't you?
But it does, like it's like you say, if that's what you're looking for,
you're going to find it.
You are going to find that, and it's.
So if I'm looking for ways to fuck it up, I'm going to find ways to fuck it up. If I'm looking for ways to help Ed grow, I'm going to look for evidence that Ed's growing and say, that was awesome how you did that. Well done, Ed. That was awesome. Let's see if we can find a different way. And then we're both going to be open to the other person's point of view, and our end result's going to be better.
Do you reckon anecdotally, like if that whenever people change the lens that they're looking through, that almost 100% of the time there's a positive outcome, there's a different outcome to what they were experiencing? And I mean, I know you probably can't. The basis of the question is that, like, we're talking about mindset and the way that, you know, people think about negative, you know, have negative thoughts that come into their head and start to control them, or people look at, you know, for the Gen X's, the Gen Ys, whatever they are, narcissistic, all that, you're going to find those answers. Do you reckon subconsciously that's happening for a lot of us individually, just in our day-to-day lives, without kind of realising it?
Yeah, it is. And the thing about it is, because as our stress buckets are almost always full, because we're not taking any time to just chill. We're constantly looking at our phones. We're waking up in the morning.
Need to be on the move.
You're either waking up in the morning and having a piss, or checking your phone, or you're checking your phone before you have a piss. They're usually your two things that you do. Yep. All right. But how hard is it to, I'm gonna charge my phone in the kitchen? Just go without it. Wake up and spend 5 minutes just lying in bed, just being alone with your thoughts. You know, you talk about things like meditation and stuff like that, and it sounds all airy-fairy and touchy-feely and stuff. But what meditation does, because thoughts come into your head. If anyone can meditate and just clear their head, they're way better than I am. But thoughts come into your head, and when you're meditating, you take those thoughts somewhere calm. You sit with it, and you get comfortable with it, which is why meditation works. It sounds like a wank. It sounds all touchy-feely.
Oh, no, it's great. But that's the thing.
It actually it rewires your brain to go from stressful thought to somewhere calm. This needs an outcome.
Yeah.
All right. And if you've got that pathway, you can use it later on in life when that stressful thought comes up. If you don't have it, you're going to be reactive.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I want to know. Sorry.
No, you're right.
I'm away.
I was about to take it down the path of the book.
Yeah. So me too.
Yeah.
Hey,
oh God,
same team.
We are so similar.
You guys are just in sync.
You want to be mates?
No, we're actually like this on the spectrum. Yeah. Right. Opposite ends. Yeah. That's why we complement each other.
You do.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to talk about stress, and I mean, I have been majorly stressed. You know what I mean? Like, there's lots of times, and probably, to be honest, I've been the most stressed since we've started this business, probably this end of last year, this year, I reckon, because it was sort of...
So that's the story you're telling yourself?
Well,
Is that a story you're telling yourself?
Well, it is a story I am telling myself, yeah, exactly. So, like, I've definitely felt more stressed, right? And I think the thing is, because we've got so many staff now, so got to keep all these people employed. Yep. We've got to keep selling fucking product to keep the lights on and also make our social impact. You know, I've got to keep rocking up here every day and fucking putting in 110% to make sure everything's happening. So, like, I am probably keen to know what your, stress, because you used to talk about how stress is awesome, right? Mm-hmm. And, like, after reading the beginning of your book, I'm like, righto, because I'm labeling stress as a bad thing. Yeah. Obviously,
just have a listen to the way you described all of that.
Yeah.
Right. You can look at it, I have to sell enough product to leave the lights on. You can also look at that as, I'm going to build a business that's going to be good enough to feed these families.
Yeah.
All right. And I have the privilege of being able to lead these people, and I have the skill sets, and I have the open mind to be able to get people to help me when I need help. And I look at this as, you can look at one of the things we talk about in the book is the fork in the stress road. You're going to get stress. It's going to come there no matter what. Your initial response is always that stress is a threat. Right, and that kept us alive.
Yep.
When we were in the jungle, we needed that. Stress was always a threat to start with. But most stresses we don't go, they're just a challenge. And the moment we reframe it and say, this is a challenge, how am I going to do this? And talk to ourselves. When we use language, the part of our brain that deals with stress and the part of our brain that deals with problems link up together, and you actually find solutions. So by having that chat to yourself, is okay, this is something that's hard. Okay, let's work out how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the fork in the stress road. You can either go to a challenge or a threat.
So I suppose the way you're talking about it's rather than sitting and dwelling on it or thinking that it's bad, it's accepting that this is the reality and that something needs to be done to make it happen.
What can I do to make this happen? Who can I bring in to help with this?
Yep.
What skill sets am I missing that I need to upskill?
Yep.
Rather than saying, this is getting bad, look how bad it is. And then all of a sudden, I told you we were going to go broke, and we go broke.
Yeah.
Rather than sort of saying, way down the track, I'm going to get the smart part of my brain online so that I make good decisions.
Yeah.
and I'm going to be open to other people giving me advice because I don't know everything. And those people learn. Those people actually then upskill and they get better at what they're doing. And then when the next challenge comes, they treat it like a challenge, not a threat.
Yeah.
All right. And the moment you do that, the smart part of your brain interacts with the emotional part of your brain and you make good decisions.
I wonder if it's got also anything to do, well, when you were talking about the Norcon story back, the building company we used to work for, when I stepped up in there and I was running that show, fuck, I was stressed. Like I was bad stressed, like not.
Yep.
And I'd like to ask about the different kinds of stress, but back then I was bad stressed, anxious, sleepless nights.
All of that
sleepless
sort of
nights.
Looking back now, it was you and fucking not even the same. Like it was fucking bad. Looking back now,
completely ill-equipped to do the job, but also my reasons for doing what I was doing, I thought were, bigger picture. Someone has to do it. I'll do it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But then I look at what we've got here and what we've built here, and there is stress, but it's a different kind of stress. And I just think, fuck, this is awesome. I'm just like it's so. Like there's always a new.
What do you think it is? What do you think is so awesome about this?
I don't know. I don't know what it is.
I've got an idea.
I think it's because there's a couple of things. I think Ed and I were definitely meant to do our paths crossed for a reason. You know what I mean? Not to get too deep, but
you're allowed to get deep.
There's a little bromance going on.
No, but the way
I'm stroking his leg.
The way that we came to even know each other was stupid. Let alone work on the same site together, become mates. Have a whole series of events that's led to this. Amazing. You know what I mean? So there's a deeper belief in me that a lot of things I've been through in my life have led to this and that. So there's a deeper belief that everything will be, that we're on a fucking journey here. You know what I mean? We're on a ride. We've done so much already, and we've got so much more to do, and that's great. And I know that together we can do that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And we've always talked about with our partnership about how. Even when we used to work on the tools and when we were saving cash to start this whole show, some days I'd have the shits or I'd be not on. Yep. And on those days he'd pick up the slack and vice versa. We're always sort of just doing that.
Yeah.
And that's such an important thing for me to recognise and for both of us, because it's to have that, it's fucking cool.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of stress. It's more of a challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've got the foundations and the team and the structure here to be able to face that challenge head on.
Great language you use there. The foundations and the team and the structure. Because when you look when I talk about stress Teflon, the three things that you need is you need the safety of a tribe. You to have the safety of a tribe. You need pride from contributing. You need to feel like you're making a difference. If you guys were just selling weird-ass looking high-vis, yeah, that'd be cool. But the stuff you're doing to help mental health, to start conversations and all of that sort of stuff, that's the bigger, better offer. That's the bigger picture. And when you've got that sort of North Star, that thing that I'm really aiming for, that's a massive stress relief. That takes out a whole bunch of things. There's a line, nothing new's been said in the last couple of thousand years. And there's a line from Seneca, one of the ancient Romans, and he said, if you don't know what port you're heading for, no wind is favourable. All right? You guys know what port you're heading for. You know you want to sell a shitload of shirts. You know you want to do some really cool things for mental health. And you know you want to get people blokes particularly, to start conversations that are going to help. That's a really good North Star. And having that North Star, it's basically like when your stress bucket's full, you quit. You want out. All right? What you're doing with that, seeing that North Star, is like pouring a bunch of stuff out of there and making room to be able to do some good shit. Does that make sense?
100%.
Absolutely.
I'm just hanging on to every word.
Oh, so am I. That's a great Seneca. That's an awesome quote, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a bit. There's another one, that whole, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. It's the same sort of thing, that you've got to have that bigger picture. You've got to have that. And one of the things I do in my coaching thing is we come up with what are the characteristics of you at your best. All right. And went through a long process. Started with my daughter. I remember having a chat to her when she was 12 and said, when are you at your best? What do you like when you're your best? And she's going, I'm really good when someone's a bit sad, and I'll go over and make sure they're all right, and I'll make sure they're okay. And I thought, well, that means you've got empathy. You're empathetic. That's fantastic. And she said, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm that. And I'm really good if I'm really shit at something. I keep working really hard, and I might never be the best at it, but I always try really hard. And I went, that means you're tenacious. So It's my 12-year-old daughter sitting there in front of me, and her things that she prides herself on is being empathetic and tenacious. And I'm just like, mic drop, job done. I'm like parent of the
proud
year.
dad moment.
Look at me.
Yeah.
I tell that story occasionally. I just get little tingles up my spine. And she's still like that now. She still prides herself. She's 18 now, and she prides herself on being tenacious and empathetic. And what we do in our workshops and our coaching is we work out what the characteristics are of you at your best. And me personally is I'm curious, creative, and generous. So if I'm being curious and learning new things and finding out how stuff works and writing books and all that sort of stuff, and I'm being creative about how to explain things differently and how to help people in different ways and being generous about helping people, I'm as happy as a pig in shit. Say I'm fighting with my wife, I give that person an alter ego. His name is Carlos. The better version of me name is Carlos. And long story behind that. You can read that in the book. But I asked myself, what would Carlos do? And there's something about that you're looking for that North Star. When you have a really clear idea of what you are at your best, and all you've got to do is ask what that person will do, it gives you that sort of helicopter view of the situation, and you actually come up with better ideas. So say I'm fighting with my wife. Am I being curious about her point of view? Am I being creative about finding a solution that we both like? And am I being generous with my time and my energy and my affection?
And almost, it plays into everything.
Yeah, almost invariably I'm not. And everyone's going to have, every person that I've done this with, and I've done it with hundreds of people now, come up with a different thing. But all of them, we end up writing their 3 words. There's a big process to go through. We write their 3 words. We give them an alter ego's name. And they go away with a really clear North Star of what the best version of them is.
Is that the place to start?
I think that's where I start with all of our workshops and coaching and stuff. Yeah, we work out what everyone's individual.
Because you see all the cliched, and not to brush them off because they are kind of true, but they all still
like we said, cliches are cliches for a reason.
But the whole thing about you can't expect to be in a happy relationship unless you're happy within yourself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like those kinds of things. You know what I mean? But it all sort of. And no, I'm not quoting anything there. That's probably a shitty
Sounds
example.
like a very loose quote.
But you know what I'm talking about. It's all about, that's all the phrases and the sayings you see that about, it starts with you.
The ancient philosopher Bob from the pub.
Yeah, exactly right.
The bloke with a wheelbarrow.
But I suppose that whole sort of idea that it kind of starts with you is having an understanding of who you even are.
Yeah.
And then understanding who you are.
Where you're going is exactly right.
You are at your best, and that's what you're talking about. And probably not enough people have ever had sort of people around them giving them positive affirmations or reassuring them that, they are actually good and worthy or whatever. But then secondly, a lot of people probably never put the time in to think about themselves.
Well, what are my values? What are the things I find important? What are my non-negotiables? And what are the things I do that bring me joy? I know every single day I'm going to get up and I have a spin bike at home and I ride that for an hour and I read something. I don't really want to do the spin bike, but I can get pretty fat if I put my mind to it. So I get on that every day and I read. And every single day I start my day with learning something new. All right? And then it becomes one of the things I call it with that finding Carlos is they're your identity goals. That's who I want to be. And when I'm 80 years old, I still want to be curious, creative, and generous. I don't want that to ever end. And so we set a lot of goals that, I want to have a house paid off, by whatever. I want to have a deposit for a house by next year.
I want to retire at 31.
I want to retire at 31. But then I did that and I was miserable.
Yeah.
Right? So those goals are okay, but they've got to sit underneath the goals of the sort of human you want to be. And being able to discover what that sort of human is and having a really crystal clear vision of these are my goals, these are my beliefs, and this is who I want to be, man, that takes out so much stress.
So if you sort of base your life and your expectations of life and your goals based around the best person or the best version of yourself that you want to be, well, then it doesn't necessarily matter what you do for a living because that might just be impermanent. Well, that is impermanent. And that,
you've got to be able to reframe what you do for a living so that it fits into that. Like I was kicking stones for the last 2 or 3 years I was doing optometry. All right. If you've had your eyes tested recently.
Yeah, he's blind.
Mate, you seem to enjoy fitting my glasses to me just before.
Square on.
I've asked which one's clearer, this one or that one. I've done the maths. I've asked that question 9.5 million times.
Wow.
All right. That's pretty boring. All right. But and you talked about lenses, looking through certain lenses and stuff before. you can look through the lens of, oh, that's really boring. But if I go into my day of optometry, and I still occasionally do a day here and there, every now and then, and if I look at it as I'm going to be curious about this patient's problems, I'm going to be creative about finding the best solution for them, and I'm going to be really, really generous with my time and attention and energy. All of a sudden, Carlos is turning up to do the eye test. He's really engaging with the person, and he's loving it. And I'm doing exactly the same thing that I was kicking stones about and bored out of my head. But because I worked out how to make what I'm doing align with what my values are, it actually becomes less stressful.
Yeah. So I've just written down here, tell me if I'm fucking way off.
Have you just come up with your three words?
No. But I'm saying like happiness, right? It's not somewhere. Like happiness is being self-aware, right? I'm just taking what we've learned in this podcast. Yeah. Happiness is being self-aware, surrounded by people that you love in an area that's safe, right? Is that around about what happiness is?
Safety of a tribe and pride from contributing to the tribe. You've got to feel like the world has to be a slightly better place because you're in it.
So you need, So you need
Let's have a think about that for a minute. Is the world a better place because you're in it? You too. Is the world a better place because you're in it?
Well, I fucking hope so.
You would. You're going out, you're getting people to start conversations about mental health. You're selling some weird-ass looking high-vis. You've got fucking awesome trucks. You know what I mean? So the world is a better place because of you two. And that's that's emptying stuff out of your stress bucket. But so when you're saying that it gets full on here and it's really hard and I've got to keep the lights on and I've got to sell it, that's okay. Because you're actually doing good stuff, is emptying it out. When your stress bucket gets full, you quit.
But is the world a better place because you're in it? That's true for everyone in their own little realm, in their own little world, right? Mm-hmm. Because everyone has family, or most people have family or friends or colleagues.
If you're in the midst of a really bad depressive episode, the answer to that is no.
Yeah, 100%.
They don't see it.
Okay.
And that's when you know that you've got a mental health problem. If you're sitting there saying the world is not a better place, but the other side, and that's when you have a proper depression and mental health episode. But what are you doing to actually make the world a better place? Are you getting off your ass and doing something? Are you going and volunteering somewhere? Are you helping mow the lady next door's grass because she's old?
Yeah.
I mean, are you doing those little things? Are you picking up some paper that's on the ground and putting it in the bin?
Yeah,
and we don't notice that. We have a thing called a negative bias. Is we're designed to see the negative, the things that's going to endanger us, and that makes sense. When we're going back to that 10,000 years ago, we're not designed to take a notice of the little things that we do that help people. I'm going to just pick up those tools and put them over there so Macca doesn't lose his shovel. Whatever. But we don't take notice of those things, and we need to, because they're actually our pride from contribution. They're the things that we're doing that.
But that goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the podcast in regards to what you're looking for, isn't it? It's like you need to switch your mindset from being like, oh, these are threats and this is bad, to this is an opportunity, this is good.
Yeah, but you've got to. We're not designed to notice the good things that we do. All right, that's not the way. It's not the way we're hardwired. We've got to change the software to do that.
Okay.
And we've got to just take a few moments and take some gratitude. When you're walking through the Serengeti, anxiety and being on edge and stuff was probably really helpful. Things like gratitude and that sort of stuff probably wouldn't have helped you much then.
God, I'm thankful that lion's running over towards me.
Yes, exactly. I'm really
walking down the Serengeti with your fucking flip-flops on.
So stuff that we're hardwired for actually isn't helping us in today's society. So we've got to do it on purpose. We've got to change the software in our brains to actually make us more aware of that.
But you're talking about like survival mode, right? Back in the day.
Yeah.
But now we've got systems and processes and, social structures that's
putting us in survival mode. That's elevating our cortisol level. That's elevating all of our stress hormones. So our body doesn't know whether we're stressed because a lion's coming at us or whether we're stressed because we can't pay the mortgage. They feel the same. We're just biochemical bags, all right? And our bag's the same whether we're getting chased by a lion or whether we can't pay the rent. We don't know the difference. The hassle is the lion comes and goes away and all of a sudden we're safe again and we're okay. We've still got to pay the fucking rent. And that's why we've got to be able to put those things apart and know how stress works, which is why I wrote Stress Teflon, to actually, if you can't win the game if you don't know the rules.
Yep.
And what we do in Stress Teflon is teach you this is how your stress system works. You can do with it what you will, but this is how it works. At least you know how your system works. And it's not there to say do X, Y, and Z, you're going to be okay. You can work that out yourself, but you've got to know the rules of the game.
You mentioned before toxic stress, and I wanted to ask you about the kinds of stress. how many kinds of stress are there, and what's good stress and what's bad stress, or is it not a blanket?
It's probably not as blanket as that.
Yeah.
But to sum it up, probably the quickest way is good stress is the thing that fires you up, gets stuff done, and then goes away. The bad stress is the stuff that just keeps lingering. It just stays there, and you can't marinate in stress all day. Stress, basically what it does, it turns off the things that you need to get away from tigers. It turns that stuff up. So you need your heart rate to go. You need your blood pressure to be up. You need blood to go to your muscles. That's going to be good to get away from tigers. But what it also does, it prioritizes things. So you don't need your digestive system to work. Ever notice that people with like irritable bowel syndrome and stuff are all stress heads? All right? Their bodies said, okay, we don't need to worry about digestion. Well, I'm too busy worrying about X, Y, and Z. All right? You don't need your reproduction system to go. You're getting stressed, really stressed, you're not going to be as horny. I mean, you want to make more sweet love to your wife, try and do some things that make her less stressed. She'll be way more likely to be amorous then. You don't need to fix parts of your body. Your body doesn't go into repair mode when you're full on stress. It's too busy dealing with whatever's going on. So you don't fix that heart valve that needs fixing. You don't fix that knee cartilage. All right, so stress prioritizes things. So you've got to be able to swing and go from chilled to fired up.
So how long would you say, and again, probably not a blanket rule, but if stress is lingering, how long is too long?
Yeah, it's a bit of a how long's a piece of string, that one.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, you can be in the most stressful time. You might have a sick parent, or you might have a sick child or something, and that's really stressful. But that doesn't stop you going and lying down on your back and breathing into your stomach and spending 10 minutes just to make sure your head can empty a bit out of its bucket. You can still do that. The stress hasn't gone away, but you've told your body that you're okay for a little bit. And that just sounds like too simple. But what it does, it gives you some room in your bucket so that whatever else comes at you, you can still deal with it.
But that plays into, in the beginning of your book, that Kelly, I'm going to say her name wrong.
McGonagall?
Yeah.
Yep.
I was going to say McGonagall.
Haven't you seen Harry Potter?
Yeah, but I didn't see how it was spelt. Fucking mong. But talking about her research here, and that stress is not the enemy, the belief that stress is the enemy is the enemy.
It's a great TED Talk. If you ever want to watch a TED Talk, Kelly McGonagall, Make Stress Your Friend, was one of the first things I actually watched when I started researching this. It's a great TED Talk. Yeah. She's written about 3 or 4 books, all of them.
What do we do before TED Talks, by the way?
Yeah, not everyone likes it. TED Talks they're weird. There
was a TED Talk the other day about TED Talks.
Yeah.
Did you see that one?
I have seen that one.
And the guy, mate, it's so true though. And he's like talking about how they come out and they'll be talking to you like this.
They're too manufactured.
And
they're good.
Mate, and he's like, what I'm saying right now means absolutely nothing.
And I'm going to pause now.
But you're sitting on every word. And now I'm stopping, and now I'm looking at this, and you're like, this is a huge fucking problem. How did I know this is a problem? Oh, yeah, the way look it up, it's really cool. But the process to get on them is fucking insane.
Yeah, it is really hard. I thought about trying, but it's like, no, it's just way too hard. But they're not, I don't know, I've watched a lot of them, and the good ones are really, really good, but so many of them just feel manufactured.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather listen to this podcast and talk to you guys. So
I also feel like you're the kind of bloke, much like I know we are as well, when you have an opportunity to stand in front of a crowd and talk for a short amount of time, you don't want to have rehearsed that talk 20 times at home.
Well, you need to know
your material.
You need to know where you're going.
You obviously know your material and know where you want to take it, but I think as soon as you start to stick to a script almost, that's when you're going to fuck it up.
Yeah. Well, you talk about good stress and bad stress. That feeling like standing backstage. I do a lot of public speaking, so you're going out and you're talking to rooms full of people, and you're backstage and you're kind of okay, yeah, let's get my shit together. And I don't want to get to calm. I don't want the butterflies in my stomach to go. I want to go out there a little bit jazzed, a little bit fired up, a little bit excited.
So you're bloody alive.
Yeah, exactly. But you look about everyone when they get nervous with something, they like say you're about to. I used to vomit before rugby games, all right, and probably because I looked at it as a threat because I was really bad at it. But we all try and go from one corner where we're full on stressed to another corner when we're really calm. And all we need to do is go from stressed to excited. The biology of that is almost
yeah.
All we've got to do is again look through a different lens.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? They're all very similar, like adrenaline.
Yeah, biology of it's the
stress, yeah, what else? Fear as well, like all those endorphins.
Fear and excitement are almost identical.
Yeah.
That feeling about getting on a roller coaster, it feels great. You love it. You wouldn't do it. There's a thing called benign masochism where we do things that feel bad, but they actually feel good, like eating hot chilies and stuff like that.
I'm a benign masochist.
Yeah.
I just found something out.
But we actually like that. And it goes back to exactly what you said before, Dan, about being able to look at it through another lens. And we've got to do that with stress. I really want to challenge you, Ed, to be able to turn around the story you told about this place and catch yourself next time when you start saying, oh, I'm under so much stress, it's this, it's that, and the other. No, you get to do this. You've got your North Star. You guys have got the thing that you're after, and you're pinning your ears back and going for it. And that is the biggest stress reliever there is. So things might be hard, and there's going to be obstacles, but if they can be seen as challenges, then you're kind of halfway along the road, and you've got that North Star of who you want to be and where you want to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. And the funny thing is, in my own head, I've been trying to figure out how I can rephrase this, because I know how it needs to look, if that makes sense, but I still catch myself going back into those spirals. You know what I mean? Like today we've had a good day today. Like yesterday we didn't have a great day, but it was a long weekend, and I was like, oh yeah, that's understandable. But it sort of plays on your mind. Oh, have we fucked something up here? What have we done wrong? Why isn't this working? You know what I mean?
I would say that. Well, what can I learn from that?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I mean? So just try and catch yourself with that language that, that we're making up stories. If we're going to make up stories that help.
Yeah, for sure. And the ironic thing is I knew that, but I wasn't implementing it because I think it was easier to be in that other cycle, if that makes sense.
The other cycle is your default.
Yeah.
It's just the way you go naturally without thinking about it. At some stage, you've got to use that I'm thinking in that shit way that's not helping. I would go, what would Carlos do? That would be the language I'd use. And then I'd turn it into a different way.
I love Carlos.
Carlos is awesome. Yeah, Carlos is the world's most amazing man.
Yeah, right.
All men want to be him and all women want to be with him.
It's so interesting. All of this, everything that you talk about, I could keep talking to you for. This is one of those ones.
Yeah, I know it is one of those ones. But I mean, we'd love to chat about how we could get you in and chat to our staff and our team. It'd be amazing.
I do that for a lot of companies now. We go in there. There's a few different ways we can do it. Probably the best one is we can have a 2 or 3 day retreat, and you actually go. If you can go away somewhere, you basically leave all the other stuff behind, and then you go through almost like a rites of passage. I actually did a rites of passage leadership training course this weekend. It was amazing, and you go in there with just looking through a certain lens, and we're almost going to optometry you and send you out with a different lens. And if you can immerse yourself in that for a few days, if you can get the time off to do that, it's an amazing thing. We're actually doing one in July with down on the Gold Coast, and we're going to get 20 or 30 people together, and we're going to have a stress transformation camp, which is going to be pretty amazing. So
yeah, cool.
Amazing. How do you? I've got another question. Sorry.
Shoot.
How do you, when you go on those 3-day camps, or when you have these kinds of conversations with people, one-on-one or otherwise, and you put them through the intensive, let's change our thinking styles, like let's, change our lens, that's everything that you talk
there's a
about.
process to that. You can't just go in and, okay, we're going to change.
Yeah, exactly right.
And you have to open people's minds first. You have to let them sit comfortably with, okay, there's some things I've been thinking for a long time that aren't serving me. That's okay. I'm going to sit comfortably with that.
The people that come, then spend this time with you, are they all there of their own choosing?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The ones that are there of their own choosing get massive amounts out of it. The ones that most don't get forced by their employers, but that kind of
can be perceived as another work
thing.
Bloody
fuck, one of these things again.
No, bloody hanging out. I don't want to spend any more time with Jenny. Fuck.
Yeah.
That's my braining.
Yeah, if I have to spend a day with Bob from accounting, I'm going to do something.
Until you actually find out that Bob's a real loose unit on the AAA, and you're like, holy shit, Bob.
What you do?
Hey, we should sit closer together in the office, Bob.
If only I knew this about you.
But there's so many elephants in rooms in offices as well, and a lot of it comes out. Remember that conflict stuff we were talking about? If we're having conflict about a task, that's okay, and you want that. The moment that disappears, all you've got is apathy. I don't give a shit enough about you to argue about this with you. You know what I mean? When you've got that, it doesn't work. So to be able to turn conflict into something that's actually okay, and the stress of that to be something that we're going to use to come up with better ideas, rather than it being I'm going to stonewall you and put up walls because I think Dan's a dickhead, so anything he says might be the best idea in the whole world, but it's going to fall on deaf ears with me.
Yeah, you've got to be. It's got to be constructive, but have like a, like a central positive type outcome, I suppose, for whatever's going on. Like it can't. Yeah, the stonewalling fucking doesn't get anyone anywhere.
And we'll do it. That's another one of our curious habits. It's a curious habit that we do, and it goes almost like that procrastination. I'm going to stonewall you because that's going to regulate my emotions.
Yeah.
You've said the word a few times today, apathy, and it's such a, when you talk about it and explain it, it's very common, isn't it?
Should we explain it? That apathy is basically the assumption that things aren't going to change and I can't do anything, so I'm not going to give a shit. Is the gist of it.
And it's kind of a it is a cop out, isn't it?
Oh,
but it's also like
not caring is that itchy thing where we're talking about going up onto the next step. That itchy, scratchy, I'm uncomfortable in my own skin feeling. And your choices there are either to numb it, distract yourself, pick up your weapons of mass destruction and look at your phone, or to not give a shit. And if you not give a shit, that regulates your emotions. So I actually don't feel that stressed about this because I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
that's a really toxic way to live your life. You can't do that for long.
Well, because what happens? Like,
you get miserable.
And then what happens? You just go down a decline and find yourself at a point in time and look back and think, what the fuck did I do?
Digging a big hole, you end up being a prick of a person to be around, so no one wants to be around you. You end up lonely and miserable.
So the best option is to always have an open mind and always try to realise that maybe you're not always right and that you can be wrong. And
you're fucking good at that. I'll give you a leg up here. You are very good at being very open-minded. Because I'm always the one where I'm like, nah, fuck this. And you're like, no. Pull it back.
But the saying fuck this is basically your way of regulating your emotions.
Oh, definitely.
I've had enough. My bucket's full.
Because I'm peaking. Like, I'm redlining. And I'm like, fuck.
You're the calm one, Dan?
Well, that's why that really is why we work well together. Because if I do that, he'll just, once we change direction and find that new target, he'll just go. He's just like, righto, this is what, and he'll just, and I'm less like that. So like, this wouldn't exist without either of us. You know what I mean? Basically, like there's no world in which any of this exists without either one of us. Mm-hmm. So that's great. I think it's a fucking awesome.
Isn't that
thing.
awesome that you recognise?
Yeah,
that,
like
I've had a lady who I worked with for almost my entire career here, and we did a personality profile, those things you fill in and, what would you do here? And she actually thought she'd be a smart ass and do it the opposite to what she normally did. And she actually came up with my personality profile. But she was complete opposite to me, but she filled all of my cracks. She was the one that all of my inadequacies, and I've got heaps of them, she was awesome at. And I really appreciated her for that, just like you appreciate Ed for what he brings. And you appreciate, the love that you had when you said that just then was just like, I really appreciate that Dan's so open-minded and he does that.
Yeah.
And isn't that amazing to have in a partnership? You can't get that when you're stonewalling. You can't get that when you're having personality conflicts.
Yeah. But I think but I think we've learnt that through fucking cliche, but learning more about ourselves 100%. You know what I mean? And being able to have the ability to be like, righto, well, I think the ability to say I'm good at these certain things and I'll stick to what I'm good at and you stick to what you're good at and it'll sort of play off one another. I think that's important. And not trying to
make him like you.
No, because there were plenty of times and I'm like, mate, fuck it. This is how you need to fucking do it like this. Like this is what your day needs to look like. But he's a major procrastinator, right? And
easily distracted. Is that the same thing?
Very much the same thing. So Dan,
excitable.
Dan is
hey, something shiny.
Mate, that's how I describe him and he's like his day to day. Like there's a laser pointer with a cat. It's like, oh fuck, it's over here now, and off he pops.
Hey, just give me a laser pointer, I'll be good.
Yeah. So I just laser at the computer. But I mate, there were plenty of times, and I'm like, holy fuck, and I'd come home and I'd vent to my wife. I'm like, fuck, like Dan, he just can't. Like when you were doing the podcast, I'm like, he just can't. Every Wednesday, he's always fucking late because he leaves it to the last minute because he gets distracted all week. You know what I mean? Like it was every week, and then I was like, well, what's the fucking point? I was like, he's obviously not going to change. I was like, let's just embrace the way this is now.
That's how it...
No, but exactly it. But I think that the awareness of understanding that and being like, righto, because he's great at what he's good at.
Something. I don't know what.
No. You know what you're good at. Like Dan's got the empathy and the calm mind and the ability to rationalise things. And I'm the fucking bull at a gate, flat out, 100,000 miles an hour, go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it plays off one another. But I think my point is having the self-awareness and understanding that you don't need to be good at everything.
And they don't need to be like you.
No, 100%. 100%.
The other side is once you understand what you are good at, it's okay not to be good at the other stuff. Like it's okay. Like certain personality types are just suited to certain things, and that's perfectly fine.
So what you just described there is you have the safety of a tribe, and you have the pride for contributing, and you have honest self-awareness. So that's the 3 parts of stress Teflon. You've actually got that in what you're doing.
Yeah.
All right.
That's
what
handy.
you need to make stress not stick. Actually, anyone under 25, Teflon's the stuff they put on fry pans to make stuff not stick.
Yeah, if you've watched
All
Dark,
right,
is it Dark Waters, the one with what's his name? Ruffalo, what's his name?
Yep.
You know the guy, he's
Don't know
the
if
Hulk.
Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo. Yeah, have you seen the movie? The one about Teflon?
No.
Oh, got to watch it. Dark Waters. It's
Not
all
the
about,
no, is it a movie or like a documentary?
yeah, no, it's a movie.
Oh,
it's about
basically
Teflon.
makes thing not stick. So
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
going to
yeah.
make stress not stick.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
it's the shit that scratches off your fry pan after it's been through the dishwasher or use metal utensils.
Yeah,
Oh my
exactly.
God, don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah, I've done that.
But yeah, the other part of it is as well that you can ask for help for those parts that you're not good at.
100%.
That they're the bits. That's where the mindset needs to be. It's like identifying what you are good at, and
Stop
then
trying to be a hero.
where the bits aren't. You're a bit
One
deficient.
part of the stress response is we actually secrete a chemical called oxytocin. And oxytocin is part of the stress response. And it's actually the chemical that you get when you hug people.
Yeah.
So basically what it's doing is saying, you don't know how to do this, you're stressed, go and find someone in your tribe that does and embrace them and get them to come and help. So our bodies have got lots of little intricacies and little weird ass things that once we actually know the rules of how all of this stuff works, we can actually recruit some of them to help us in those situations.
Yeah.
So that feeling of being anxious and uncomfortable also has an element of I need to pull people in. But if you haven't gotten the habit of pulling people in, it doesn't work quite that way. So you've got to understand how some of these reactions in our bodies work. And when you do that, a lot of this stuff just doesn't stick anymore. Like I know that you know that if you've got to come up with a different idea and you're stuck in your head and you're stuck in your way of doing it, I'm going to go and see Dan because he's got a different skill set.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
We're just about to wrap up.
I'm just looking at the big grandfather clock. We're cracking it.
How long are we meant to go for?
We're not. There's no
Okay.
time limit.
You
but
don't put a time limit on a fucking
We
good
can edit that
conversation. No way.
Yeah.
You know, put that in your book, Socrates.
Quote of the day. Put that in your book, Socrates.
But just to come back to a Socrates quote, it was Socrates, wasn't it?
Know thyself?
No, the one about the path, every road, when you don't know your
you sail. You're
destination.
talking about the port.
That was Seneca. And,
Seneca.
And when you don't know what port you're heading for, no wind is favourable.
And the other one, every road, if you
don't know where you're going, every road leads you there.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Is it?
Sometimes,
Can you take that?
Yeah.
One of two.
It's
ways?
also that Robert Frost quote of, I took the road less travelled and it made all the difference. There's lots of those things that, those things are cliches for a reason, like we've said, but you don't always have to know where you're going. It's just to be comfortable with, okay, I'm going to put a time frame on it maybe and I'm just going to go and
because
travel the earth.
I'm convinced, like, on a number of occasions in my life, I haven't known where I was going. Even when we started this business, I didn't know what was going to come.
But one of the things
You know what I
about that, all of that sort of, we look at it, I didn't know how we're going to start that business. I didn't know what I was going to do for a job. I didn't know. That's okay. What you do need to know is what sort of human you want to be. You do need to know what those identity goals. I want to be curious, creative, and generous. I know that, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm going to work out a way to be curious, creative, and generous.
Identity goals. I love that. Like we talked about it obviously a lot earlier. You've brought it up again, and it's really struck a chord with me. I think it's really fucking cool, and I don't think enough people put the time in to understand that. And that's something I believe that I know a lot about, my identity of the person I am or who, when I operate best, but, I'd always like to do more.
What are the characteristics of you at your best? That's the stuff you got to know. And when we go through the process of finding Carlos in our workshops and stuff, everyone walks away with that. They walk away with an alter ego. So when they need to ask themselves, how do I fix this problem? I ask, what would Carlos do? And whenever I've asked what would Carlos do, the answer's instant. Don't have to think about it. I'll do the right thing. I'm going to do that. And it's instant because they've actually put people in fMRI machines and they've looked at the parts of the brains that are lighting up. And if you say me, I, and all of that sort of stuff and speak in the first person, the fear center of your brain, and you talk about something distressing, the fear center lights up. If you talk about yourself in the third person, the actual front part of your brain that does all the heavy lifting and all the hard work, that actually comes online. So by talking to yourself in the third person, what would Dan do here, or what would Carlos do?
I was going to say, so it is just talking to yourself. These are internal thoughts.
Yeah.
You're not like, you're not.
Yeah.
You have to pocket dial Carlos.
You're not being like LeBron James. If that's the best thing for LeBron James, then that's what LeBron James is going to do. That sort of stuff. It's
Exactly
not like that.
right. Yeah.
But a lot of those sportsmen do that. There's a thing called the alter ego effect. Great book if you want to read a book called the alter ego effect, and it's basically a lot of those really high end. If this is the best thing for Tiger Woods, then
he does speak like that, doesn't he?
Yeah, a lot of them do. LeBron's the king of it. LeBron in every interview you hear with LeBron James, it's like that's what LeBron James is going to do.
And that is the the kind of one of the character traits that makes a champion, and it's also one of the character traits that piss people off about champions as well. Is that like tenacity? That
but they're so self-aware.
Yeah,
they know when they know when they're on. They
are.
know what makes them tick. Like you might watch the
Michael Jordan. Yeah, he
documentary.
cried. Like it brought him to tears. That part when he was like, "This is if that's
a really
people don't." Yeah,
that's a really interesting one. That I watched that documentary and that came out. 2 came out every 2 weeks or whatever it was.
Fuck, it was so annoying.
Just put it out. Just put it out. Binge this. I'm gonna binge it.
But
do my head in Netflix.
It was a really interesting one because it was one of those ones where you didn't want it to end because it was just so enthralling. And I actually started reading 11 Rings, which is Phil Jackson's book.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of a closet Buddhist. I'm a bit of a like to pick and choose from all different religions and stuff. And one of the things that they didn't talk about, who was the captain of those Bulls teams?
I don't even know.
Was it a white guy?
Yeah. Well, Jordan was the captain up until they started winning them. When they won their first one, and was the first one Phil Jackson was there, he actually made Bill Cartwright, who you only see a little bit of in the documentary, he actually made him the co-captain.
Okay.
All right. So
the
Jordan,
big bald-headed dude.
No, big black fella. They call
was it
Bill Cartwright? He was the
wires crossed.
They made him the co-captain for the first 3 years, and it goes back to you two being complete opposites. Jordan had the drive and the do this at any cost, follow me, and I'm going to lead you to the promised land. Bill Cartwright was touchy-feely. He was that sort of, you okay, kids. He was really nurturing, and Jordan missed that. Jordan, you want to have a good leader. Jordan got away with it because he's a fucking unicorn and he could do things no one else could do. And people try and emulate how he was and to be a good leader, and they're going to fail because they're not fucking unicorns, all right? But what the reason that Bulls team worked is because Phil Jackson was smart enough is we need to balance that, and he made Bill Cartwright a co-captain, and he looked after the...
Yeah, interesting.
And he was that nurturing
the yin and
sort of
yang
person.
type.
Yeah, exactly. And then in the last 3, Scottie Pippen took that role. What they did is exactly what you two have done is they found people that had opposite skill sets and put them together in a place of responsibility.
Yeah. All by accident, by the way.
Phil Jackson.
This one, anyway.
Phil Jackson was inspired.
Amazing book if you want to read it, 11 Rings.
Yeah.
And he talks all about, and then he talks about, we talked about the Black Mamba earlier. He talks about Kobe Bryant and how him and Shaq didn't quite have that. They didn't quite have that. I'm loving the other person's skill set.
Yeah.
And they were a bit more dysfunctional. They still won 5 rings, but they were a bit more dysfunctional than what the Bulls were. But
as a leader, he was just a pretty deeply spiritual dude. Like
Phil Jackson.
Yeah, Phil Jackson
absolutely.
was. And I watching that whole series, I was like, he was actually made coach of that team the day that I was born. When that happened, I was like, I saw that date come up and I was like, bugger me. Do you never know like what happened on the day that you were born, like the news headlines or whatever. But
Phil Jackson became coach of the Bulls.
Phil Jackson became coach of the Bulls.
Yeah, you told me that.
10th of July 1989. I was like, fucking hell.
There you go.
How about that? Me and Phil must be meant to be.
mates. Oh, that's great.
He's a guru though. He's one of those ones that you look at and he's going to find inspiration wherever he can. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be on the back of a cornflakes box. He's going to find inspiration and he's going to work out a way to, if he hasn't worked out a way to get to you, Ed, and to get the best out of you, he's going to keep looking.
Yeah, well, that's and they're the best coaches and leaders, aren't they? And they often talk about like Wayne Bennett and how he is just such a he's not the like the greatest like, technical coach, but like he's such a people person. He gives a fuck. Like, that you hear about players, how they're like, he asks how family is. And, if someone in my family's sick, like he's often, he deeply cares about people rather than everything else. And that's where the community and the camaraderie and the leadership sort of comes from, because there's that level of trust, and it's not just about sport. It's about care and respect and sort of the love you've got for people.
Yeah. Is there a leadership void on building sites around the place?
Oh, massively. But the issue is people.
How do we fix that?
Well, the issue is that people don't know what leadership is, and people aren't getting taught. And I think probably it could be a cop out, but I don't think there's fucking very good leaders to look up to anymore. And we don't have great leaders.
The main issue is, I believe, is that you can't have a king of the trades. You know what I mean? You can't. Who is that leader?
You can't tell the electrician what to do because he's better at electrician.
Exactly right. You know what I mean? Like it's who's the, and there's always to the day we die, there'll always be the debate about who's the king of the tradies, and the answer is the chippies. It always has been, but no.
Someone out there just
someone just switched off.
Spit their oat milk across the dashboard.
But I suppose
that's probably a good thing.
That's the thing on a building site. Yeah. There is always so much going on, depending on the size of your site. But
I think there's something to be said for investing some time and some energy into stuff, into learning how to lead.
Oh,
most definitely.
There's definitely a lot of building sites out there with fucking awesome project managers who know how to communicate and know how to listen and understand done their homework and understand the plans and the processes that need to. They exist. They definitely do exist. So it's probably a generalisation that there's no good leaders, or that there's not enough good leaders on building sites. But there is definitely a lack of leadership in a lot of situations, and particularly for apprentices who are looking up to guys and setting bad, not great habits early on, and teaching, shortcuts, and looking at, just listening to negative approaches about life in general from the weekend, and getting up the piss and hitting the tab. Like there's definitely the toxic side of things, but there's also some really fucking awesome sites out there with some really, really great leaders, and we see it in the TradeMutt community. Like we see it all the time in businesses who wear our shirts, and it really seems to be the businesses who take on, the responsibility to give a shit about the mental health of their team. You also see a clear distinction in those businesses who run a better operation.
They're open-minded.
Sort of care.
They care about change and improvement and wanting to be better. They're the people.
The biggest thing from, I've had years of running businesses and stuff, and the biggest thing, if you can take nothing away and don't learn anything else about leadership, you've got to care, and you've got to show you care. It's fine to actually care, but you've actually got to show people, and people have got to know that you've got their best interests at heart, and then they'll walk over hot coals for you. But you've got to actually show that, and not just do things to do what I say because I'm the boss and that is good for my ego. You've got to be able to show people that you care. That's what Wayne Bennett does, and that's what all good leaders do. They kind of know. They know how to care and show they care.
And I honestly could not have believed that more until the journey that we've been on with TradeMutt, and seeing some of the results, seeing some of the overnight shifts in culture and attitude.
From I care about you. Here's a conversation.
Yeah, it's something as simple as a shirt. You know what I mean? Like we talk about it, and we've seen it so many times.
I have to take my hat off to you too. It's an amazing concept that let's do something simple as do some really fucking ugly shirts, but to get people talking. And there's one of the things about blokes is, if you have a think about it, if you've got something on your mind, something's really stewing and you just don't know how to deal with it, as a rule, we probably have two types of blokes. We go to one bloke and we say, this is happening, this is this, and they'll just go, oh shit, that's no good. Yeah, that's terrible, that's terrible. And if you've got something rolling around in your head, going to that bloke and he just says that's terrible doesn't really do you any favours.
No.
A little bit of empathy, but doesn't do you many favours. We all know the other bloke on the other side of that, when you say this is a problem, X, Y, and Z, and he just goes, just fucking do this. We all know that bloke?
Yep.
All right? And I don't want to do that, and that's not going to help, and I disagree with you. where is the person in the middle that will listen to it, make sure they know that we understand. Yeah, I've got that empathy. Is this the problem that you're feeling? Yes, it is. Yeah, I understand why that is. Have you thought about looking at it this way? What would happen if you did it this other way? And that almost an empathetic alternative. And as mates, we've got to talk to each other in a cold state when nothing bad's going on, and to be able to say. And I have a thing with Mick Zelko, who I wrote the book with. We had a thing we called the chat. And the chat is basically when I'm in an emotional old brain shitstorm and I don't know my ass from my elbow and I'm stressed out of my head, I'm going to ring you and I'm going to say, I'm in an old brain shitstorm and I'm going to outsource my smart decisions to you. All right. And what you're doing then is you're actually asking for advice. You're soliciting advice. You're actually wanting advice. And then that advice is actually going to get heard. Whereas when you get unsolicited, we've all been given unsolicited advice. It might have been the best advice in the whole world.
If you're not ready for it.
But if it comes from the wrong person, delivered in the wrong way, at the wrong time, it's not going to hit home. So actually, everyone listening, if you can pick a mate who's smart and who understands you and have the chat where you just say, look, if I'm having a shitstorm, I'm going to ring you and tell you I'm having a shitstorm. Your job then is to shut the fuck up, listen, make sure I know that you understand, and then don't tell me what to do, but steer me a certain way. And I think if blokes could have at least one mate that does that for him, I think a lot of our stress and mental health problems will actually go away.
Absolutely. Mate, that's awesome. Fuck, what a podcast.
Did we? I hope we talked about what we're supposed to. We did, didn't we? Like, we talked about the book. Like, I've had a great time.
I've educated myself.
Yeah. Like, I've had a.
We've sucked a fair bit out of him.
Did we talk? Yeah, I mean, we definitely talked about all the good stuff, didn't we?
I mean, stress Teflon. Let's get it up there on camera, mate.
You can get it from Amazon.
Yeah, get online, check it out.
Amazon, free delivery. It'll be here tomorrow.
Yeah, right? I'm a stress guru, so I don't do a lot of other social media, but you certainly can find me on LinkedIn or go to lukemathers.com.au.
Luke, mate, we can't thank you enough. And mate, definitely going to be talking to you about how we can do some stuff with our team.
I love this podcast. I love podcasts in general because it creates this opportunity.
Yeah,
it's so good.
I actually have a podcast myself called the Reset Podcast. I'm going to drill that as well. So if you go Reset by Luke Mathers, you'll find that on all your podcast things.
Get around it.
But there's something about podcasts is you get to go deep. You know, I would never have a conversation like this if we met in the pub. Because you don't want to be that guy. But when you're a guest on a podcast, you're there to be that.
There's an element of it that's a structured conversation. Well, not structured, but you're there to have a conversation. You know, you put the headphones on. There's a microphone there. That's what you're there to do. So this is what we're gonna do. We're here to do it. Fucking go deep. Love that.
But it is interesting how for the corny, it's not like it's a safe area for us to all just let this shit go here. You know what I mean? And that's why we love podcasting.
None of us want to dominate a conversation. And I wouldn't have said as much as I've said today in a normal conversation. It's one of the things I love. You know, I've had friends on my podcast that I've never had as good a conversation as I have.
Yeah.
So there's something wonderful. I think that's why they've got so popular, because people you might not be part of that conversation, but you're privy to it. And I think we're all yearning for
you're just sitting next to the people at the pub. You want to hear what they're talking about. That's basically what it's like. You're sitting at the table just listening to them.
Yeah, but I think, you know, that safety of a tribe, we need to be able to have those conversations, and we need to be able to be okay to be vulnerable and be okay to be able to, you know, I really want to learn from you. I want to be like you, Dan. I want to be curious. I want to understand better ways of looking at things rather than being stuck in I know everything and don't threaten. You know, you talked before about toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that. Toxic masculinity, you're always right.
Yeah.
All right. So you don't want to be that.
It continues to blow my fucking head how every single conversation or topic that you have around anything to do with anything that we've talked about today all intertwines and links with each other in some form. It's just, and the more it's great. Fucking love it. Luke, but mate, this has fucking been awesome. Yeah. We're going to have to wrap it up.
We are going to have to wrap it up. Fuck me. 2 hours.
No, there's probably 15 minutes of that was fluff at the start.
Yeah, it would have been. Hour Hour and 45. But,
We
mate,
can
awesome.
cut it down.
No,
We're
Luke,
not
thanks so much for
cutting
your
it
time.
down.
We're never cutting this
They're
down.
getting all of it.
This is a feature film. Thanks so
Especially-
much. Everyone, get online, check out Stress Teflon. I've given one of these into the TradeMutt library, and I'm also taking this one home to finish reading myself. So thanks so much, mate. Really appreciate your time, and mate, can't wait to catch up with you again.
It's been emotional.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
I'm bloody emotional.
That was awesome.
If I stop, I'll die.